Hello guys, welcome to day 2 of the fundamentals of mathematics. In this video we'll be talking about the identity, inverse, laws of zeros and the distributive properties of numbers. This video is going to be the last lecture video on the properties of numbers, and a video after this, which we are going to call day 3, is going to be a detailed insight on how to use these laws and the laws studied in day 0 and 1 to answer past Cameroon GCE board questions in maths and additional maths. So if you have not seen day 0 and day 1, please check on my channel. It's maths time questions and answers, and keep yourself up to date. So without much ado, let's see the first property, which is going to be the identity property of addition and multiplication. So when we talk about identity, what do we mean? We simply means that what a number that when added or multiplied to another number will keep that number unchanged. For instance, let's talk about addition. What if we add 3 plus 0? What are you going to have? We are going to have a 3. Let's take another example. Minus 7 plus 0. We are going to have minus 7. What about 0 plus minus 6y? We are still going to have minus 6y. So we are going to see in these 3 examples, we are seeing that no matter what the number is, if we add 0 to it, then that number will become unchanged. The identity of that number will be unchanged. Therefore, we are going to call this 0 that makes any number unchanged when added onto that number as the additive identity. And we are going to call 0 the additive identity of any number. What about multiplication? What number are we going to multiply with any other number and leaves that number unchanged? Let's see examples like 66 times 1. What is it going to give us? It's going to give us 66. What about minus 10 times 1? It's going to give us minus 10. Let's look at another example with a variable. Let's say 1 times 7x on 6 is still going to give us 7x on 6. Therefore, we can conclude that if we multiply any number with 1, it is going to leave that number unchanged. And since the identity of that number is unchanged, we call 1 the multiplicative identity of any number. Because when we multiply any number with 1, it leaves that number unchanged. So that's how we get what? The laws of identity when it comes to addition and multiplication. So let's look at the inverse of a number. What do we mean by the inverse? Let's take examples so that we see clearly what we mean. Let's look at minus 9 plus what is going to give us 0. Minus 9 plus what? Plus 9 is going to give us 0. Because we have said from the commutative principle that minus 9 plus 9 is the same as 9 minus 9, because the order doesn't matter when we are dealing with addition, right? So in this case, we are going to say minus 9 plus 9 is 0. What about 100 plus what is going to give us 0? We have seen that 100 plus minus 100 is going to give us 0. Therefore, we know already that 0 is the additive identity of any number. So we can restructure this question as minus 9 plus what is going to give us the additive identity, or 100 plus what number is going to give us the additive identity. Now, in all of these cases, we have seen that the number is the opposite of the given number, meaning 9 is the opposite of minus 9, and minus 100 is the opposite of 100, right? It's just the change of sign. So in this case, we call the opposite of a number its inverse, and if we add the inverse of a number plus the number is going to give us 0. And from this example of identity, we know that 0 is the additive identity of any number. So we can conclude that b plus minus b is equals to 0, where b is any number except 0. So b plus minus b is equals to 0. Now what is b? B is a number. What is minus b? Minus b is what we call the additive inverse of b, and 0 is what we call the additive identity of b. Let's now look at the multiplication, what we mean by the multiplicative inverse of a number. Now let's take for instance 3 on 5 times what number is going to give us 1. So 3 over 5 times 5 over 3 is going to give us 1. Punch on your calculator. If you don't know, 5 will cancel 5 one time, 3 will cancel 3 one time, so 1 over 1 is 1. So 3 on 5 times 5 on 3 is going to give us 1. Again, 79 times what is going to give us 1? 79 times 1 over 79 is going to give us 1. So in this case, again, if we look clearly, we are seeing that what the opposite of this number, not the opposite in sign, the inverse of this number, the reciprocal of each number times the number is going to give us 1, and 1 is the multiplicative identity of that number. Therefore, we are going to say that if we multiply any number by its reciprocal simply means we invert the number by its reciprocal, is going to give us the multiplicative identity. And we can conclude that if b times 1 over b gives us 1, then we can call 1 over b the inverse, the multiplicative inverse of b, and we call 1 the multiplicative identity of b. I hope that's clear about identity and its inverse. If you have a question, please don't forget to leave it on the comment section. Like, subscribe, and share these videos to those who need it. Without much time, let's go into the next property, which is multiplying by 0. So to multiply by 0, let's consider multiplying by 0. Now, what is multiplying by 0? We have already known that 0 is the additive identity of any number, and because 0 can be added to any number without leaving the number unchanged, right? So what about multiplying a number by 0? It makes the product to go down to 0, meaning that 0 times any number gives us a 0. For instance, 1278 times 0 gives us 0, or 0 times minus 9y gives us 0. So we can conclude that if any number, say p, times 0 will give us 0. So we need to know that, or even if the number is a negative, then 0 times minus p is still going to give us 0. Now what about dividing numbers with 0, or dividing 0 with a number? Now let's take an analogy of a situation like this in real life. Let's say your father has 5 kids, and then he has no mango in a basket, and he asks the 5 kids to go to the basket and share the number of mangoes in the basket. So what happens? The kid goes to the mango, the 5 kids goes to the basket and discover there are no mangoes in the basket, so they return disappointed with none of them having a mango. So what happens? In this case, we say that we have 0 mangoes, but we have 5 people to share the mango. Therefore, 0 divided by 5 will give the kids no mango. Therefore, we can conclude that if we are dividing 0 items by 5 people, then the answer is 0. So generally, dividing 0 by any number gives us 0. So 0 divided by a is 0. 0 divided by 1 million is 0. What about dividing by 0? Dividing by 0 simply means we should take any number and divide by 0. Let's go back to our example of mangoes. Now in this case, there are 5 mangoes in a basket, but your father has no kids and your father is not eating mango. So what happens? Who owns the mango? We don't know. Which of the kids owns the mango? Because your father has no kid, we don't know which of the kid owns the mango, is going to have the mango. So we say in mathematics, if we don't know, we call that value undefined. Therefore, we are going to take, for example, that 6 divided by 2 is equals to 3. Then to verify this answer, we can decide to multiply. We can decide to multiply 3 times 2 to give us 6. Therefore, if we are dividing a number, let's say 6 divided by 0 is equals to, what is it giving us? We don't know the number. Therefore, we can as well say that 0 times what we don't know give us 6. What are we going to multiply by 0 to give us 6? It's what we don't know. The number is too big. So if we don't know, we can say that in mathematics, that value is undefined because we don't know it. Therefore, we are going to conclude that any number x divided by 0 is not 0, it's a number that is undefined. Right? Okay, let's move to what we call the distributive property. In the distributive property, let's consider 3 numbers, 2, 9, and 3. In this case, we are adding 9 plus 3, and then we multiply by 2. So there are 2 ways to do this. The first way is what we already know by what? The order of the operation, which is 9 plus 3, and then we take the result and multiply by 2. So 9 plus 3 is how many? 12. 12 times 2 is 24. So we can also do this using what we call the distributive property. So if multiplication is distributive over addition, then we are going to have 2 into 9 plus 3 to give us 2 times 9 plus 2 times 3, which is still the same as 24, because 2 times 9 is 18 plus 2 times 3 is 6, which is 24. Then into 9 divided by 3. Let's look at it. So we are going to have, if we are using the general rule, which is what we call the order of operation, then we are going to have 9 divided by 3 times 2, and 9 divided by 3 is 3 times 2, which is 6. Then if we are going to use the distributive property again, then we are going to say that 2 times 9 divided by 2 times 3, which is going to give us in this case 3, because 2 times 9 is 18 divided by 6 is 3. So you can see that what the results are different. Therefore, we need to know when a property or an operation is distributive over the order and when it is not. So in this case, we can therefore conclude that an operation is distributive over another when we have P cure R, and the result is going to be P times Q plus P times R. In this case, we say that what? The operation is distributive. In this case, where we have 2 into 9 divided by 3, is not distributive because the answer is not the same as 9 divided by 3 times 2. Right? That is the law of distribution, and that's where we come to the end of this video today. But before we go, we are going to give you a summary of all the properties we have learned so far, and the properties include commutative property, associative property, identity property, inverse, distributive, and the laws of zero. So guys, take note of these properties and we will come back to them in the next video, which we will call day 3, where we'll be answering past GC equations in mathematics. So stay with me and remain blessed. Bye bye.